because it's like, well, if it is, then who's in control? You know, other than you could go spiritual God, but it, you know, we will. That is so funny. That is so funny. Because things happen to people and God wouldn't want that. Why do some people get to have a free ride in life and others are out here trying to curl up on the cement and they didn't do anything wrong? Say there are people who didn't really do anything that bad or bad at all. What's the difference? And yet you have, you know, people in the penthouse in that building there, which doesn't have good energy inside, by the way, I forgot to tell you. Was about to take care of someone's cat there and was like, ooh, I hope they don't call for official cat sitting because, ooh, I needed to get out of there right quick. But anyway, point being, we have people who do a lot of things wrong. They just happen to be born into a position of power. And God doesn't punish them by putting them on the street. So anyway, they're still living large. Jeannie at the United Lodge of Theosophists. I actually, out of desperation, I visited Theosophists because I was trying to figure out what was going on in my world because it was so torturous, if you will. And and it was interesting. There were a few things that went on. There were little magical, mystical, you know, you can take out books. You can like take out a book and return it, sort of like a library. And then the one that I happened to pick up and take home, you know, half the time I was trying to keep busy as much as possible, had a little, you know, mysterious note inside, and it kind of had deeper meaning. Like it actually connected to stuff that I was experiencing. Forget what it was now. I probably took a picture of it and saved it to a but also there was a lot of flickering of lights there, and I knew like I knew that something was going on there. But it's also an offbeat place that not many people go to, so if someone were to orchestrate something, it would be kind of easy to do there. Also very old school, as you could kind of tell. Old wood, just the darkness of, you know, some sort of lodge from 1953, you know. It's, you know, all you need is the word lodge and game over, you know what I mean? So, anyway, my grandfather was in the Shriners North Temple. He was actually considered a 33rd degree Mason. I didn't know him really. He passed away when I was 2-ish. Sadly, because that's right when my mom was getting a divorce. So a lot of men sort of disappeared at the same time. And, you know, my mom was sort of abandoned because her sister and husband and kids moved to Florida, as did her mom, my grandmother, and grandfather. My grandfather passed away like 3 weeks after, you know, officially moving down there. So anyway, point being, he was in the North Temple, has a Grand Poobah hat, I guess. Shriners. I kept a few things that my mom had in the closet. I kept them just because it's a piece of history and it's kind of interesting that he actually did this. He worked on the railroad as a lineman, and a lineman is someone back in the day anyway who would shimmy up the poles and ground electricity or something. In fact, he had a scar on his stomach. From, you know, sort of a mishap in one of his, you know, jobs. So he was like on call as a lineman for, back then it wasn't called Amtrak. In fact, when he retired, it would switch to Amtrak. There was a huge timeline change for a lot of people, I guess, and we happened to be on that timeline, or my grandfather, and there's a switcheroo. I have to look it up yet again, but it's like, you know, it's like Pennsylvania Railroad for the most part. And that's what it was considered even in Delaware. They lived in Wilmington, Delaware. And somehow he was a lineman and a Noor Temple Shriner person. Even back then, way back then, they had excerpts or quotes from the Quran. Now, the Quran is a word of, sort of a Bible, if you will, a biblical book that would surface after 2001. People hadn't talked about the Quran for years unless you were involved in a certain group. And I think it's interesting that on all these certificates, like he was awarded a certificate, even though he was from Delaware, it was like a DC chapter. From all these, they had an excerpt of the Quran on there, and it's about peace, a very peaceful excerpt. So I thought that was interesting that all these years later, people don't use that word, and there it was all this time. America knows a lot about the Quran, turns out.